Welcome along, fellow time travelers and strange historians. This time around, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. Typically, I talk about historic crimes and trials, but this time I'm going to talk about the murder accusations against O.J. Simpson and some information that you may or may not know about, which may or may not prove that he was innocent. I know that sounds strange. Trust me, I know that sounds strange. You have been told for as long as you can remember that OJ was guilty, OJ was guilty, OJ was guilty. But was he? Well, let's walk through some of this information and see how you feel when I'm done. Before I begin, please like and share this episode and subscribe to my channel. And hit the notification bell. And check out the links below to learn how to support my research and productions. Now, sit back and pour yourself a cup of coffee, or a tankard of tea, or a mug of mead, or a chalice of cider, or a flagon filled with any beverage of your choice, and join your fellow strange historians around. The O.J. Simpson trial was one of the most famous and highly publicized criminal trials in American history. It took place in 1995 and centered around former professional football player O.J. Simpson, who was charged with the murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ronald Goldman. The trial captured the attention of the nation and had significant cultural and legal implications. Here's an overview of the trial. On June 12, 1994, Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were found brutally murdered outside Nicole's residence in Los Angeles. O.J. Simpson, a former NFL star and celebrity, was quickly identified as a suspect due to his history of domestic violence incidents with Nicole and his connection to the victims. O.J. Simpson was arrested on June 17, 1994, after leading police on a low-speed chase in a white Ford Bronco. The chase was broadcast live on television, attracting a massive audience. Simpson eventually surrendered to the police at his home. The trial began on January 24, 1995, and lasted for nearly 9 months. It was presided over by Judge Lance Ito. The prosecution argued that Simpson had a motive to kill his ex-wife due to their troubled relationship, and that he had a history of domestic violence. The prosecution also presented DNA evidence, blood found at the crime scene and in Simpson's car, and a bloody glove found at his residence. The defense, led by famous attorney Johnny Cochran, argued that the evidence was mishandled and tainted, and he famously used the phrase, "If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit," when the ill-fitting glove was presented as evidence. Several key moments during the trial gained significant media attention. For example, you had that glove demonstration. So, O.J. Simpson, in court, tried on a glove that was found at the crime scene. It appeared to be way too small for his hand. This led to doubts about the prosecution's case. Then you had the racial aspect. You see, the trial touched on issues of race, as O.J. Simpson was, still is, African American, and the victims were white. The defense argued that Simpson was being framed by a racially biased police force. And then, of course, you had Detective Mark Furman, who was a key witness for the prosecution. He faced allegations of racism and was caught lying on the stand, which cast doubt on his credibility. Now let's jump ahead a little bit, because this is really what this video is about. There was a crime book, O.J. Simpson is Innocent and I Can Prove It, by Dallas private investigator William Deere. It was written back in 2012, and it pointed out evidence that could incriminate, are you ready for this? Hold on. Are you ready? Jason Simpson. It was also a key theory in the 2000 BBC documentary, O.J. Simpson, The Untold Story. So let me ask you, right now, and let me know in the comments below, have you ever heard the name Jason Simpson before? Do you have any idea what the relationship is between Jason Simpson and O.J. Simpson? If not, you're going to really find this fascinating. Well, even if you do, you're going to find this fascinating. See, exactly what took place on the night of June 12, 1994 is unknown and remains disputed. There were no cameras. There were no witnesses. So I'm going to say that again. Exactly what took place on the night of June 12, 1994 is unknown and remains disputed. You might not think that there's any dispute, but there is. Here's what we do know and are relatively sure about. The following is the sequence of events on the night of June 12, 1994 and early morning hours of June 13th based on the testimony of witnesses. So you got O.J. Simpson, right? He said he was at his Brentwood home waiting for a limousine. On that night, O.J.'s son, Jason, you with me? O.J.'s son, Jason, was working as a chef in a restaurant called Jackson's. It held 80 to 100 people at the time. By the way, all times are specific time that I'm going to be mentioning. Earlier in the day, O.J. and his family attended a dance recital for Sydney, who was O.J.'s youngest daughter. O.J. was told that his daughter was going to have a sleepover that night. So he expected his ex-wife's home to be filled with people that night. Do I need to say that again? O.J. Simpson, who was later accused of going to his ex-wife's home and murdering her when she opened the door, fully expected the entire house to be filled with a bunch of people, including his daughter and her friends. Okay, 6:30 p.m. Nicole Brown Simpson, her children, and several others go to dinner at the Mezzaluna Trattoria. That's a restaurant that was located at 11750 San Vicente Boulevard in Brentwood, California. By the way, for those of you who don't know, or even if you do, let's talk about Nicole Brown Simpson a bit. So, Nicole Brown Simpson, she was the 35-year-old ex-wife of O.J. Simpson, who was, as we know, a famous former NFL star. She was born in Frankfurt, Germany, to a German mother and an American father, and would later attend high school in California. She was working as a waitress at the Beverly Hills Private Club, and that's where she met her future husband, professional NFL player O.J. Simpson, in 1977. And the pair married in 1985. They had 2 children, Sydney and Justin. Now, remember, the gentleman I talked about before was Jason. So, not one of these children, okay? The children that O.J. had with Nicole were Sydney, a girl, and Justin, a boy. But she later filed for divorce from O.J. Simpson. And so, okay, who is Jason Simpson, right? He was born in 1970. His first son and second child from his first marriage to Marguerite L. Whitley. Jason was just 7 years old when his father started dating Nicole Brown. O.J. at the time was still married to Jason's mother. That would make a son, right, kind of upset, yeah? I mean, this woman appears in his father's life and then makes his life a living hell because his parents get divorced, right? So Jason's parents, O.J. and Marguerite, divorced in 1979, and O.J. went on to marry and father 2 more children with Nicole. Jason had a difficult childhood, from what I read. His youngest sister from O.J.'s first marriage, 1-year-old Aaron, tragically drowned in the family pool months after his parents' divorce. Imagine that. Imagine you're a boy, yeah? And your parents get divorced, your father leaves your mom for another woman, your younger sister drowns in the pool, right? And you say, you wonder, would that have happened, had this woman not appeared in your father's life, right? So Deere's book suggests that Jason began abusing alcohol, ecstasy, and cocaine as early as age 14. I'm not saying this, by the way. I have no idea if this is true or not true. I'm talking about the book and what was mentioned in the book. And puts forward the medical records to show that Jason had 3 recorded suicide attempts. I have no idea if this is true or not. I'm just telling you what's in this book. So this Jason, OJ's son, had alcohol issues, ecstasy issues, cocaine issues as early as age 14, and 3 recorded suicide attempts. And so you might be saying to yourself, well, here's a young man who's maybe mentally unbalanced, emotionally unbalanced, psychologically unbalanced, whatever you want to think. None of my business. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just pointing out some of the information. So by the time the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman took place, Jason Simpson was grappling with mental health issues and a criminal record. So check this out. The family was supposed to show up at the restaurant where Jason Simpson worked as a chef, and he was excited. He wanted to show off his talents for his family, right? I mean, how exciting. Have you ever had, whatever kind of job you have, if you have some kind of skill and you're proud of what you've done, and, you want your family, right, your friends to be proud of you and to be impressed with what you're able to do. And this was Jason's chance. So he was excited, right? His family's coming. He's telling his coworkers, hey, my dad's coming and, my family's coming. And they're all excited for him. Well, check this out. Unfortunately, Nicole changed her mind about going to that restaurant, and they never showed up. Now, it's not known whether or not Jason was told, but put yourself in his shoes. It must have been pretty embarrassing for him, right? It must have been very upsetting for him. So let's talk about what happened at 8 p.m. Nicole Brown Simpson and her children left Mezzaluna. They stopped for ice cream on the way home at 875 South Bundy Drive. Between 9 p.m. and 9:30 p.m., Brian Kalin, who was a friend staying in a guest house at O.J. Simpson's home, and O.J. go to McDonald's for dinner. Sometime between 9 o'clock and 9:15, the manager of Mezzaluna recounted that Brown's mother telephoned the restaurant about a pair of lost eyeglasses. And so after a brief search, glasses were found in a street gutter outside the restaurant, and the manager put them in a white envelope. The manager then went over to Ron Goldman, he was a waiter at the restaurant, and he said, listen, when your shift ends, can you bring this over to the Brown residence? And Ron Goldman's like, yeah, no problem. So even though Ron Goldman worked that night as a waiter, he did not wait on the Brown family. So let me tell you a little bit about Ron Goldman. According to a Los Angeles Times article that was published 3 days after his death, he was either 25 or 26 years old, and he met Brown only 6 weeks prior to the date when he borrowed her Ferrari. So he knew her for 6 weeks, right? A month and a half. He's a waiter. She's the very wealthy ex-wife of O.J. Simpson. And she loaned him her Ferrari. Now, I don't know about you, but ladies, can you tell me what kind of relationship you might be having with a man for you to loan him your Ferrari? I'm not suggesting anything. I am not insinuating anything. I have absolutely no idea. I'm not a woman. I've never been divorced from a wealthy man. I've never been married to a wealthy man, or a wealthy woman for that matter. But I'm wondering what you think about this. That's all. Just wondering. Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, the two grew increasingly friendly, and occasionally they met for coffee and dinner. Okay, let's jump to 9:30 p.m. Jason Simpson left work at 9:30 in his Jeep, and he drove his girlfriend home. He left the restaurant with his chef knives that he stored under his seat. I'm going to say that one more time, just in case you missed it. He left the restaurant with his chef knives that he stored under his seat. Do you know any chefs? Do you know any sous chefs? They take great pride in their knives, don't they? They use their own knives very often, don't they? And they bring them to work, and they leave with them. Maybe not all the time, but quite often, yeah? And you gotta store them somewhere, in your car. And so Jason, supposedly, stored his knives under his seat. He was 24 years old. He was on probation for assaulting his previous employer. You ready for this? Are you ready? He was on probation for assaulting his previous employer with a knife. He was ordered to undergo 25 sessions with a psychologist. Once again, none of this is my own research. I'm not making any of this up. None of this is my opinion. I'm just sharing information that I came across, and you can think whatever you want about this information. You might say to yourself, well, okay, so he carried knives, and all right, so he was on probation for assaulting his previous employer with a knife. Okay, he went to a psychologist, but all right, doesn't everybody do those things? Well, okay. Check this out. He was on Depakote. You know what Depakote is? I guess it has probably different uses, but Jason was taking Depakote for bipolar disorder. Do you know what bipolar disorder is? Have you ever met anybody with bipolar disorder? Just wondering. At least 2 women claimed Jason had assaulted them. One claimed that he used his knife to cut off all her hair. It was also claimed that he picked her up and threw her into a tub with no water and nearly broke her back. According to this book and the information in it, Jason Simpson had rage issues and had many triggers for psychological disorders, including the death of his 23-month-old sister, who he was responsible for watching and who drowned in a pool. So let's be sympathetic to Jason for a moment. Can you imagine what this poor guy was going through? His responsibility was to watch his younger daughter, and she drowned in a pool. Imagine what that does to somebody. Imagine how that messes somebody up. Imagine your own life. Think about all the what ifs you have in your own life. What if I did this? What if I did that? What if I didn't do this? What if I didn't do that? Right? You've got a lot of what ifs, right? Imagine if one of your what ifs had something to do with something he did or did not do that led to his 23-month-old sister drowning in a pool. Sucks, right? But anyway, he was known for carrying a knife at all times, either on his side or in his boot. Do I need to say that again? He was known for carrying a knife at all times, either on his side or in his boot. After dropping his girlfriend off, this is according to information that I came across, he went straight back to his apartment and said he was home alone, watching TV until 3 a.m. So that's what he said. He was home alone watching TV until 3 a.m. There were no witnesses, I believe, to confirm that. Just what he said. And we have no reason to doubt him, right? If somebody says they're home watching TV, why in the world would we doubt them? So okay, that's what he was doing, according to him. 9:33 p.m. The Los Angeles Times reported that Goldman punched out at 9:33 p.m. He sat at the bar in the restaurant and had bottled water. At 9:45 p.m., Kalin and Simpson returned back to Simpson's residence. Between 9:48 p.m. and 9:50 p.m., Goldman left the restaurant with the white envelope containing the glasses. It took him 5 minutes to walk to his apartment at 11663 Gorham Avenue. Once there, he spoke briefly to his roommate, Mezzaluna's bartender, Stuart Tanner, before he left. The two had plans to go out later that evening. At around 10 p.m., he planned to walk to 879 South Bundy Drive. It would take him at least 17 minutes. At around 10 o'clock p.m., someone went up a narrow walkway along the side of the home where Nicole Brown Simpson lived. The person either knocked on the door or rang the bell. There was a window there, so Nicole could easily have seen who it was if she looked. On the other hand, she might have just opened it since she expected Ron Goldman to come by. Prior to opening the door, Nicole made a warm bath and lit candles around her home. Her and OJ's small children were sleeping upstairs. Nicole stepped outside into the courtyard. She was barefoot. For reasons that I'm not aware of right now, supposedly there was an argument of some sort, and Nicole hit the person she was speaking with. I have absolutely no idea at this point how and why anybody would have that kind of information. If you happen to know, please let me know in the comments below. Brown's body was soon lying face down and barefoot at the bottom of the stairs leading to the door. The walkway leading to the stairs were covered in blood, but the soles of Brown's feet were clean. She was stabbed a total of 12 times and had several lacerations across her scalp, face, neck, chest, and left hand. She was also brutally beaten. At one point, it seems that she turned to get away, and she was hit on the top of her head with the bottom of a knife, and she was knocked to the ground. Her body was collapsed in a pool of blood beneath a small set of stairs leading to an outdoor walkway. At 10:15 p.m., while watching television, Pablo Fenez, a neighbor of Nicole Brown Simpson, heard the cries and constant barking of a dog. At around 10:17, Ron Goldman likely approached the outside gate at the front entry to the condominium. Ron Goldman was 6'1". OJ was 6'1", and he weighed 212 pounds. Ron weighed 171 pounds. As he entered, Ron may have seen the killer and may have screamed out, "Hey, hey, hey," 3 times. I think a witness claimed that he heard that, and so that's probably where that information came from. The killer then grabbed Ron's throat and began stabbing him. While this was happening, Ron, who was considered to be an expert in martial arts and very athletic, repeatedly hit his assailant to the point that Ron's knuckles were badly bruised. Whoever it is that he hit would no doubt have been badly bruised and red and swollen. So let's go over that information again. Ron Goldman was, I think, 25 years old. He was 6'1" and weighed 171 pounds. He was strong. He was in martial arts. He was very athletic. He repeatedly hit his assailant. His knuckles were badly bruised. What does that tell you? It tells you that whoever it is that he hit would have been badly bruised and red and swollen on their face or neck or body or head. Interestingly, O.J. Simpson was involved in a film called Frogman, where he was supposed to be in really good shape and well-versed in how to use weapons. It has been said that O.J. Simpson was actually in very bad shape. He was suffering from arthritis in his legs and was getting things wrong, and they had to keep doing retakes. Now, getting back to the crime scene, Ron Goldman was stabbed nearly 30 times in the body and neck. His body was found on a small plot of soil close to a tree and the fence. Near Goldman's body was a blue knit cap, a left hand, extra large light leather glove. I believe it was called Aris Isotona. Am I saying that right? If not, let me know in the comments below. And the envelope containing the glasses that he was returning. Now let's go back to Nicole. The assailant, after killing Ron Goldman, returned to Brown's body, stood on her back, pulled her head back by the hair, and slit her throat. Her larynx could be seen through the gaping wound in her neck, and vertebrae C3 was incised. Brown's head barely remained attached to her body. This is pretty brutal stuff. You would have to really hate somebody. You'd have to be filled with so much anger and rage inside of you to return to your victim and do that. That's someone who's totally out of control. That is not somebody who's calm and cool and collected. At or around 10:20 p.m., a trail of the assailant's bloody shoe prints ran through the back gate. To the left of some of the prints were drops of blood from the assailant, who was apparently bleeding from the left hand. Measuring the distance between the prints indicated that the assailant walked rather than ran away from the scene. Now let's talk about blood. O.J. Simpson famously, by a whole bunch of accounts, got woozy at the sight of blood. O.J. bought a small knife earlier in the day, but it was later revealed that it was not used in the murders. The bottom of Ron Goldman's tennis shoe was cut by the knife, so it must have been a really sharp knife, and not at all what O.J. bought at a store. Imagine what kind of knife. Imagine what kind of sharp knife can cut through a tennis shoe. Do you have any knives in your kitchen that you think could cut through a tennis shoe? You might. If you're a chef or have some professional chef knives, I have no idea. You tell me in the comments below about the knives in your kitchen. The person who killed Nicole and Ron had to have been very familiar with knives and how to use knives. You know who wasn't? O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson was not an expert on using knives, but you know who was? According to some information I came across, Jason Lamar Simpson was. He was trained in combat at the Army Navy Academy. I'm going to say that again. Jason Lamar Simpson, who had his own sharp knives and always carried them with him, and was a professional chef, was trained in combat at the Army Navy Academy. Interesting, right? Upon hearing of the murders, many of his former classmates suspected Jason was the murderer. Think about that. Many of Jason's former classmates, when they heard about the murders, thought Jason was the murderer. The bottom of his shoes and clothes would have been covered with blood. And there would have been blood in his car, right? Now I read that his car was inspected, and no blood was found on his brake or the accelerator, and no blood was found on the carpet. And obviously he did not have time to change all of his clothes if Jason was there. And of course, there's no proof that he was. We're just throwing around ideas here. I'm not suggesting anything. But he would not have had time, if he was there, to change all of his clothes at the murder scene. At 10:25 p.m., a limousine driver arrived at Simpson's home. At 10:30 p.m., a copy of Jason Simpson's time card appeared to have been altered to show that he left work at 10:30 p.m. His times were penciled in, even though the time clock worked perfectly fine. 10:40 p.m., Kalen claimed that he heard 3 loud thumps on an outside wall of his home. Between 10:40 and 10:50 p.m., the limousine driver buzzed the intercom several times, but he didn't get a response. At 10:55 p.m., the limousine driver called his boss and said that O.J. Simpson was not home. And his boss said to wait until 11:15 because Simpson was always late. There was nothing at all unusual or weird or strange about O.J. Simpson not answering his intercom and being exactly on time. O.J. Simpson was usually running late. Around 10:55 p.m., a dog walker who lived a few blocks away from Brown came across her dog barking in the street outside her home. The Akita, whose legs were covered in blood, followed the man home. He tried to walk the dog back to where he found it, but the dog resisted. Later on, he left the Akita with a neighboring couple who offered to keep the dog overnight. Around 11 p.m., the limousine driver said he saw a black person, 6 feet, 200 pounds, walking across the driveway toward O.J.'s house. Kalen went to the front of the house to check on the noise. He saw the limousine driver at the gate. Several seconds later, the limo driver again buzzed the intercom and O.J. Simpson answered. He said he had overslept and had just gotten out of the shower. Between 11 p.m. and 11:15 p.m., O.J. Simpson put his bags in the limousine. So let me ask you a question. If O.J. Simpson was the one who committed these murders, how did he clean up all the blood and hide his tracks in only 10 minutes? I have no idea if O.J. Simpson was guilty or not guilty. I'm just asking. There was no blood on O.J.'s wall-to-wall carpet. There was no blood on any clothes in the hamper. There was no blood in the shower. There was no blood in the toilet. There was no blood found anywhere that law enforcement looked. However, 2 socks mysteriously appeared in front of O.J. Simpson's bed. There was also a drop of blood found on one side of a sock that penetrated to the other side of that same sock. So let me ask you a question. If there is a foot in a sock, when one side of the foot gets bloody, how did the blood travel through the foot and get onto the other side of the sock? Any idea how that works? The blood on the socks could only have come from a vial of blood. You want to know how I know that? Because it had the preservative EDTA on it. Now, I'm no expert on EDTA, but I'm pretty sure that I don't have any in my blood, and I'm pretty sure that you don't have any in your blood. And so, if you cut your foot right now, on the left side of your foot, the chances of blood getting over to the right side of your foot and onto your socks, a drop, that is, a drop. We're not talking about your foot being all bloody. We're talking about a drop of blood on the left side of your foot. There's no way in hell that same drop of blood is getting to the right side of your sock. And once again, it had the preservative EDTA on it, which means it came from a vial of blood. Incidentally, if you had just committed 2 murders, and you were able to get rid of all of your clothes and all of the evidence, and you're heading out the door, what are the chances that you would take your socks off in the middle of your bedroom and leave them there on the floor? What are the chances? I have no idea. I'm asking you. What do you think? If you committed a murder and you knew you needed to get rid of all the evidence, are you going into your bedroom, your carpeted bedroom, and taking your socks off in the middle of the bedroom and just leaving them there? And then going among your business to get rid of all the evidence? And then returning to your bedroom to pack your bags to go on a trip? And at no point do you stop and pick up the 2 socks that are laying there in the middle of your bedroom? Just wondering. I don't know. I'm asking you. At 11:15 p.m., the limousine left for Los Angeles Airport, LAX. At 11:35 p.m., so that's 20 minutes later, the limo arrived at the airport. 10 minutes later, OJ left on an American Airlines flight to Chicago. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow time travelers and strange historians, once upon a time, you could get to an airport 10 minutes before your flight left and make your flight. Especially if you're O.J. Simpson and running to the airport. Anyway, at 12, that's a joke in reference to his commercials. Then he used to do Hertz commercials, right? He was running to the airport. All right, so 12:10 a.m., the couple that was watching the lost dog, that would be Nicole Brown Simpson's dog, noticed that the dog was very agitated. And so the couple decided to walk it back to where it had been found. And so around that time, they reached the area where the Akita had been found. The dog stopped outside Brown's home, and the couple saw Brown's body lying outside the house. And they called the police. And so that is when the bodies of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were discovered by law enforcement outside her townhouse. About 5 hours later, Detective Mark Furman and Philip Van Adder arrived at Simpson's house. Between 5:15 and 5:30 a.m., the detectives examined an apparent blood stain on Simpson's Ford Bronco. Between 5:40 a.m. to 5:50 a.m., Detective Furman decided to jump the wall of O.J. Simpson's house so police could get inside the estate. Once on the grounds, the detectives awakened O.J. Simpson's daughter, Arnell, who was staying in a guest house. She took the police to the house and telephoned Kathy Randa, her father's longtime assistant. Between 7 a.m. and 7:30 a.m., Detective Van Adder declared the area a crime scene and went to get a warrant to search the house. Now let's jump ahead to O.J. Simpson being arrested. A vial of blood was drawn, 8 cc's. It contained EDTA to preserve it. The vial was given to Detective Van Adder. He put it in his pocket, and then he returned with the vial in his pocket to the crime scene later that afternoon. When the vial was finally turned in, it only had 6.5 cc's of blood. So let me ask you, my fellow time travelers and strange historians, what happened to the 1.5 cc's? Any idea? Maybe you know. I don't know. I'm asking you. Maybe you know. So let's talk about some theories about why this all may have happened. One theory is that the real target was Nicole Brown Simpson's friend, Faye Resnick. According to a New York Times article, Resnick was living with Nicole Brown Simpson and taking drugs around the time of the murders. Johnny Cochran proposed that the dealers were after Resnick because she did not pay her debt. In an interview with Larry King in 1996, Resnick defended her drug use and rejected the notion that it caused the murders. When a caller actually asked if Nicole was murdered by drug dealers going after Resnick, she commented that there was no evidence of such a thing. During the trial, Johnny Cochran accused Detective Tom Lang of ignoring the drug cartel theories. In a case of hypothetical questions, Johnny Cochran asked Lang about how dealers murder and dispose of users in the area, using the terrifying Colombian necktie being one of the ways. A Colombian necktie, by the way, is, well, I don't want to get too graphic here, but remember earlier when I mentioned that the assailant went back to Nicole and pulled her head back and slit her throat? Well, there it is. The New York Times article outlined that Lang insisted that he did not believe the murders were affiliated with drugs. He had a quote saying, "That wasn't the evidence that I had, and that wasn't the path that I pursued. I had nothing to lead me in that direction." End quote. The theory was dismissed months later. According to Judge Ito, the defense was highly speculative, and the team was not allowed to mention Resnick's alleged drug use to the jurors. This was a pretty big blow to the defense, since Johnny Cochran hoped to bring in Resnick's then-boyfriend, Christian, I think Reichardt was his name, as a witness. Now let's talk about another theory, Glenn Rogers. So Glenn Edward Rogers, he was born on July 15th, 1962, also known as the cross-country killer or the Casanova killer. That guy was an American serial killer. He was convicted of 2 murders and is a suspect in numerous others throughout the United States. He is considered a possible alternative suspect to O.J. Simpson in the 1994 murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. There was a 2012 documentary called My Brother, the Serial Killer, that examined Rogers' crimes and included claims that Rogers killed Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman in 1994. According to Rogers' brother Clay, Rogers claimed that before the murders, he had met Nicole and, this is a quote, was going to take her down, end quote. During a very lengthy correspondence that began in 2009 between Rogers and criminal profiler Anthony Miolis, Rogers wrote and created paintings about his involvement with the murders. During a prison meeting between the two, Rogers claimed O.J. Simpson hired him to break into Nicole Brown Simpson's house and steal some expensive jewelry, and that Simpson had told him, quote, "You may have to kill the bitch," end quote. In a filmed interview, Glenn's brother Clay asserts that his brother confessed to his involvement in the murders. Rogers' family stated that he had informed them that he had been working for Nicole in 1994 and that he had made verbal threats about her to them. Rogers later spoke to a criminal profiler about the Goldman-Simpson murders, providing details about the crime and remarking that he had been hired by O.J. Simpson to steal a pair of earrings and potentially murder Nicole. The 2019 film, The Murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, purports to tell the story as asserted by Rogers and his family about his involvement with Nicole Brown Simpson. And then, of course, we have theory number 3, Jason Simpson. If it was Jason Simpson, he may have called his dad, O.J., and told him what happened. After doing so, Jason then may have gone back to the restaurant where he worked to get rid of the clothes by putting it in the laundry there and to alter his time card. Now, O.J. may have gone over to Nicole's house and found Nicole and Ron. He then may have headed home and saw the limo and then parked, went over the back gate, and then entered his house through the back entry to his house. And if so, then he may have put his shoes in his gym bag and took it with him, or maybe none of that happened at all. Supposedly, a box was found at some point that belonged to Jason Simpson. You see, he supposedly rented a storage locker and put a box in there with his diaries and a knife and a knit cap and some cooking magazines and some personal belongings and photos of himself. There was also a copy of the death certificate of his sister who died. There was also a letter from the district attorney's office addressed to Jason asking for his medical records. There were also photos in there showing Jason wearing a knit cap. By the way, O.J. Simpson may be one of the most photographed men in the world, and this was prior to his arrest. During the course of my research, I discovered that there are no photos anywhere. There have been no photos ever of O.J. Simpson wearing a knit cap. But meanwhile, there are photos of Jason Simpson wearing a knit cap. Jason's Jeep was purchased by investigator William Deere. The center console had been cut out with a knife and a piece of it was removed. So that's some stuff to think about. And then, of course, there's theory number 4. The prosecution argued that the domestic violence with the Simpson-Brown marriage culminated in her murder. Simpson's history of abusing Brown resulted in their divorce and him pleading guilty to 1 count of domestic violence in 1989. On the night of the murders, O.J. Simpson attended a dance recital for his daughter and was reportedly angry with Nicole because of a black dress that she wore, which he thought was a bit too tight. O.J.'s then-girlfriend, Paula Barbieri, wanted to attend the recital with Simpson, but he did not invite her. After the recital, O.J. returned home to a voicemail from Barbieri ending their relationship. According to the prosecution, O.J. then drove over to Nicole's house in his Bronco in order to reconcile their relationship, and that Nicole refused, and that O.J. killed her in a final act of control. And then, according to the prosecution, Ron Goldman came upon the scene to return some eyeglasses and was murdered as well in order to silence him and remove any witnesses. Afterwards, the prosecution said that O.J. walked to his Bronco and drove home, where he parked it and walked into his house. There, he took off his blood-stained clothes, put them in a knapsack, except, of course, for his socks and a missing glove, put clean ones on, and left to go to the limousine. Once again, O.J. Simpson went through all this effort, but he left his bloody socks. He left his socks with a tiny little drop on it in the middle of the room. Okay. At the airport, the prosecution said that O.J. opened the knapsack, removed his clothes, and his Bruno Magli shoes, and the murder weapon, and threw them in the trash before putting the knapsack in one of his suitcases and headed towards his flight. Wow. That's a lot to do in that very short period of time while he's trying to get to his flight, but okay. O.J. was running late, but he caught his flight. A passenger on the plane and the pilot testified to not noticing any cuts or wounds on Simpson's hands or face, head, body, neck. Once again, let me remind you that Ron Goldman had bruises on his knuckles. He beat the hell out of whoever it was who stabbed him to death. That person was really messed up. Ron Goldman may have known he was losing the fight and was even going to die, but he made sure, in his valiant effort to defend himself, that that person was going to look like they were involved in something pretty bad. Out of respect for Ron Goldman and his memory, it seems like it would be a good idea to follow through with his last wishes and try to find the person who he so badly bruised. A broken glass, a note with a telephone number on it, and bed sheets with blood on them were all recovered from Simpson's room at the O'Hare Plaza Hotel. The manager of the hotel recalled Simpson asking for a Band-Aid for his finger at the front desk because he had cut it on pieces of notepaper. Ouch. And so those are 4 theories that you might want to consider. I understand that you have been told that O.J. Simpson was the murderer. I understand why you want to believe it. I might even believe it myself. I'm not saying one way or the other. However, if you're on a jury and you need to convict somebody, knowing that they're going to be in prison for the rest of their life, or maybe even be executed, you cannot have a shadow of a doubt. If you're ever on a jury and you have any doubt in your mind about somebody's guilt, well, you don't need me to tell you. That's the way the American justice system is set up. The defense's job is to put doubt in your mind. And it's up to you to decide if the prosecution has made their case 100%, that you have no doubt in your mind. So think about these theories. Think about everything that I've said. And you let me know in the comments below if you still believe 100% without a shadow of a doubt that O.J. Simpson was guilty of the murders. Because let me tell you, the only way you possibly could is if you were there, or there was an eyewitness, or there was some sort of photographic or other evidence. Otherwise, you really don't know. So let's go to the verdict. On October 3rd, 1995, after deliberating for only a few hours, the jury found O.J. Simpson not guilty of both murders. Now, the verdict shocked many, as the evidence against O.J. seemed so strong to some observers. And so the trial's outcome raised debates about the criminal justice system and race and the influence of celebrity in legal proceedings. Now, what do you think about that? After everything that I just told you, and if you watched the trial and know anything about it, you really think if you were on a jury, are you really going to convict somebody or say they're not guilty based on their race or based on your race? That doesn't even make any sense, but okay. That's fine. The media likes to have fun, especially in the United States. We're trying to stir people up and turn them on each other, but okay, that's fine. I'm not like that. I really doubt if you're like that. You look at the evidence and you try to decide, did the prosecution make their case 100%? The O.J. Simpson trial remains a significant cultural and legal milestone in American history, sparking discussions about race, well, in the media anyway, celebrity, domestic violence, and the limitations of the legal system. Yeah, things, from what I've been told, got really, really ugly after that. All of a sudden, you had wives and girlfriends taking out restraining orders like crazy against their boyfriends, their ex-boyfriends, their husbands, their ex-husbands, and things got really, really unpleasant for quite a while because no judge wanted to deny a woman a restraining order. And so that was one of the things that came out of the O.J. Simpson trial. So once again, let me know what you think. We're going to talk about the trial in another episode, and we're going to talk about all the evidence. But this is some information that I came across that I thought you'd find pretty interesting. Because once again, based on everything you've heard, is it possible that O.J. Simpson was innocent? Or was he guilty? Guilty or not guilty? What do you think? And so this concludes this episode of Strange History. So what do you think? After hearing all this, are you 100% convinced that O.J. Simpson was guilty of murdering the woman who he loved, who he married, and who was the mother of his children? Do you really think that O.J. Simpson, who thought that his daughter was having a sleepover with children, do you really think he left his house dressed all in black, grabbing a very sharp knife, and went over to his ex-wife's house to murder her, either in front of all these children or so the children would find her? Because sooner or later, the kids are going to look for their mom. Now you might say to yourself, well, once he got there, he saw that the house wasn't filled with children, so there was his chance. Yeah, but he still would have had to have left his house with the determination to kill his ex-wife, and that she would be found by his young children or their friends. Do you think that? I have no idea what you think, but you can let me know in the comments below. Were you misled by the media? Were you lied to by the media? As of the date of this recording, which is the summer of 2023, almost nobody believes the media about anything anymore. So you let me know. Do you think that the media was more honest back in 1994 and 1995 than they are today? Do you think O.J. Simpson was guilty or not guilty? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do me a favor and kindly like, share, and subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. And if you want to support my research, please click on the link below in order to make a donation directly to me. Please join me on Patreon where I post exclusive content, and please comment and leave a super thanks below. That really helps me out a lot. Kindly be kind to all non-human animals, and please don't eat them. They don't like that. And please do yourself a favor and go to a local shelter and adopt a cat or a dog. You and they will be very glad that you did. Until next time, my fellow time travelers and strangers, until next time, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys.